The idea is that the top guys in the world, they're trading with billions of dollars. So when they want to buy a position, they're not like they're not buying 1 to 10 options or 100 options. They're trying to buy 20,000 or 15,000. And so because they're coming in buying such significant size, they pop up on the screens of unusual options activity.
This is the How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast, brought to you by 10MinuteStockTrader.com, where we cover finance, stocks, options, entrepreneurship, education, and money. And here's your host, voted one of the top 100 people in finance, Christopher Ewell. Hey there, traders. Welcome back to today's How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast. Today, we have a special lesson for you. I'm putting it here on the podcast because I really believe that this is going to provide you massive, massive value. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And hey, listen, if this podcast was useful to you at all, I really highly suggest that you go check out the full trading course at AIStockTradingSystem.com. That's AIStockTradingSystem.com. Hey, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified every time we give you more tools, tips, and tricks to help you trade faster and trade smarter every single week. Hey there, traders. Welcome back to today's How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast. Today, we have a special guest online, Felix Fry. Now, Felix comes to us with a history of Wall Street. And honestly, I think he is going to tell us exactly what I'm doing wrong. Felix, I think that there is a lot that we can all learn from you. And I'm really excited that you offered to come on the show today. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing. So let's do this, Felix. I know you've come from Wall Street. You know what you're talking about. Let's get you to kind of give us your background because
Sure.
you have an options education platform called optionsgeek.com, which is where you're sharing all this. And I'd love to learn more about you, your history, and how you came to optionsgeek.com.
Sure. So I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School in 1995. I got a job straight out of school in Chicago. My first job was working for Swiss Bank O'Connor, and Swiss Bank was a top investment bank on Wall Street, although it's in Chicago on Wall Street. They had just bought a few years earlier O'Connor Partners. That's important as far as my history. O'Connor Partners is one of the most well-known options firms and one of the earliest, most successful options firms on Wall Street. In the 1970s, Black-Scholes came out with the formula, the Black-Scholes formula, and O'Connor put a group together that made a fortune. And we weren't the only ones. Another one might have been, say, like a Susquehanna. And so through the 1970s, they had created this education and created this training to make, people great market makers. So when I arrived in Chicago in 1995, I was part of this program. And it's a well-known on Wall Street. If you've gone through the O'Connor program, it's the best, considered the best options training program for options traders, options sales traders. Okay, so I did that and then spent 3 years at Swiss Bank O'Connor, where I was recruited to work at Bank of America. And at Bank of America in New York, I'm from New York, and in New York, at Bank of America, that was where my career really took off, because that was where I was face to face with some of the biggest investors in the world. I was put in a hot seat there. Having that background, they hired me with that O'Connor background and training and wanted me to face, the universe of investors. And I call them the top 1%. The big hedge fund guys. And it was pretty amazing experience to sit there and deal with the guys you read about in the newspapers, to talk to their trading desk and to their firms and understand what they're doing. And that I did that for 10 years. After 10 years, I wound up, I took a year off and then was recruited at a top hedge fund, Scoggin Capital Management, working for two of the best risk reward managers in the last 30 years. Okay, they've been around 30, 35. There's not many hedge funds I can say that. Mm-hmm. And I had an incredible experience, a learning experience there. While I was an expert options trader, when I got there, I had realized earlier that I really didn't understand one question. And when I got to the hedge fund, I was very curious as to how they did that, how they answered this question. And I spent really my whole career trying to find that answer and trying to understand that answer. Now, I am a top expert in options. I have a very unique experience. There's over the last 25 years, there's probably only 200 200 people that have traded volatility, equity volatility at the top investment banks. And then of that 200, 250 traders that did that job facing the top guys in the world, only a few went to hedge funds. Okay, only a few. It's a natural progression on Wall Street to go from the banks to a hedge fund. And of those few that went to a hedge fund, only a few of those went to a very specific type of hedge fund, which is a directional hedge fund. Usually the progression is once you learn volatility trading at the investment bank, you go do volatility trading at a hedge fund. There's very few derivative traders on Wall Street that eventually go away from their expertise to join a hedge fund and work for a directional hedge fund. And so there's very few people online. I know of one, me, that has that experience, that is out here talking about what the biggest guys in the world do, how they trade. And so my message at Options Geek, because I built Options Geek to answer this one question I've been telling you about, which is, how do you actually choose if I'm buying? First of all, I know that the top guys in the world, in general, they're buying options. That's something new that everybody's thinking. Well, everybody's talking about selling options. So the first thing I say is, well, the top guys in the world, the George Soros, Steve Cohen's, Bill Ackman's, the guys you read about in the newspaper that you see NBC, most of them, not Warren Buffett, but most of them are buying options. And they're buying options for two reasons. They're buying options for the leverage, and they're buying options because there's limited liability. Okay, so those are the two reasons. It's a dream come true product for those players. Okay, so so I knew that, and I said, all right, I'm gonna change the game a little bit here. I gotta make sure people understand selling is not the only way to make money. You can make money selling options, but there's a whole game over here of buying options. But then I thought, well, for years, how do you choose the right strike? How do you actually choose the right strike options? And I can tell you that in the universe of education, you're not going to find the answer. In the millions of YouTube videos, you're not going to find the answer. You might find a answer, but I assure you that it's not the right answer. Okay, because what the answers that you'll be getting are very generic. You buy this one, the in the money one, you buy the at the money one, you buy the out of the money. There's no reason why or how. And actually, it's foolish to think that one option, the in the money 70 delta option, is the right option for you, and it's also the right option for me, and it's also the right option for a million other investors. It's foolish to think that. There's a whole board of strikes. The question is, how do you choose the right one? So I honed in that, and I spent 16 years trying to figure out this answer as a top expert in the world, knowing that other experts really had a tough time with this question as well. And when I got to the hedge fund and I was sitting side by side with the top 1%, with billionaires, that's when I realized what they were doing. And even then, it took me years to sort of understand how I could apply that to a system where people could understand. So I spent an enormous amount of time over the last 25 years really drilling down how we can make this easier for people to understand.
Mm-hmm. So what is that option contract? I got to know.
What is so the way so it starts with the idea starts with risk reward. Okay, so the education, let's go to the existing education first, because we got to really lay out what's the problem.
Right.
I told you the existing education really stems from the O'Connor education. The O'Connor education was the first education out there. So everything else that follows was really built off that. Whether you're taking strands of here, there, the hockey sticks, the whatever's out there. Okay, whatever you see, and it's been the same for a long time. 50 years. Okay. And the idea is that that education really stems from the Black-Scholes formula. So the Black-Scholes formula spits out these derivatives called the Greeks, and it spits out something called implied volatility. And so if you have even looked at any education, the focus is on the Greeks, and the focus is on implied volatility.
Yes. Yeah. That's consistent across the internet. I mean, that's what led me down this path. I've done plenty of episodes on that. Yeah.
Exactly. That is what everyone teaches.
Yeah.
Okay. And now if you go through 100 hours of those videos, you learn everything about the Greeks. You do papers. I've interviewed Columbia University students with PhDs, much smarter than I am in options. They've done it, sliced it up in a million ways. And I asked them the simple question. That's great. With all your knowledge, how do you choose? I like Apple, let's say. I like Apple here. I want to buy some options. With my idea, am I supposed to buy options? Is this the right time to buy options? And two, once I decide that, which is the right strike for me? PhD man says, this is the one question I've been trying to figure out for a long time. Yeah, there's no answer. There's no answer out there. So no matter how long you've gone in this process of looking at videos, learning the Greeks, learning implied volatility, how can 99.9% of the world not be able to answer that question? So now you have the next level of education is having someone say, well, use the 70 delta, or use this option, or use some ratio of this versus that. Again, it's focusing too much on the Greeks and implied volatility. The top guys in the world, when they buy options, they're not focusing on the Greeks. They might look at it. They might look at one or two little things, but they're not really focusing on it. They're not focusing on implied volatility. They'll use it as a gauge. They will use it as a gauge. It's high or it's low, or, it's somewhere, where it's about average. Okay, just a gauge. What they're really focusing on is how much they're going to pay for that option, and where they think the stock is going to go in order to make that option worth X. Okay, so what they do is they don't focus on the Greeks, the value of the option, what the value of the option might be 2 days from now with the stock up 50 cents, whatever. They focus on buying an option where they understand where the stock is going, or they think they understand where the stock is going, and where the risk reward of what they're risking with the premium and the reward they're going to receive in that option, whether that's good enough for them. Okay, whether or not it's good enough for them. Saying that you're going to buy an option for $3 and you're going to make $4, yeah, you're going to make money, but is it good enough? Is the $4 in profit good enough for your $3 of risk? That's what they're doing. That's what they're masters of. That's what my whole education teaches, and how it focuses more on what you pay versus what you think it's going to go. And then the final question, is that good enough? For example, I'm going to give you a perfect example to give you and your audience a way to think about it. If I said to you, here's an option for $2. We think the stock's going to go here, and ultimately that option will be worth $6. So that's 3-to-1. Seems pretty good, right? What if I told you, Chris, I have a trade for you. I have a good bet for you. I can give you 35-to-1 odds. 35-to-1 odds. Would you do it?
Yeah, that sounds.
You might
great.
say, yeah, it sounds pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Right? Most people say it sounds pretty damn good. I said, okay, where are you at right now? You're down in where are you sitting at? What's the nearest casino?
Well, I'm in Texas, so we don't have
Texas.
casinos here. Yeah.
No boat casinos. We'll go to Mississippi. I'll fly you somewhere.
Sure. Let's do that.
Or we go to Vegas. I'll meet you in Vegas. There's probably 30, 40 casinos that have roulette tables.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pick the right number, you get 35-to-1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So would you do that? Would you go and start playing roulette at the casinos to try to make money? Of course not. Right. You know that the casinos always win, and you know that the odds are against you there. So the point I'm trying to make is that you shouldn't make your decision based on 35-to-1. Someone says 35-to-1. I love 35-to-1. I'll do that trade. But then I say, let's go to the casino and play roulette. And you go, nah, I don't really want to play roulette. But it's 35-to-1. And on one side, you said you loved getting 35-to-1. And on this side, you said, nah, I don't want to. So your mind understands that in certain instances, it's no good. And in some instances, 35-to-1 might be good.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, how do we know that? Okay, so now if I switch that back to options and stocks, and I said to you, I just showed you something, and I said, here, you can buy this for $2, and it might be worth $6. Okay, and that's 2 to 6, that's 4, so it's actually 2-to-1. Okay, so four profits versus 2 losses, so you're going to get 2-to-1 on your money, and you're saying that sounds great, and I'm going to say, well, how do you know? How do you know 2-to-1 is the right odds to get paid? How do you know that? Right, and again, that's how they think about. That's how. Now, if you buy an at the money option, and you're looking at something that it's worth $2 again, and it's at the money, and you say, all right, well, if I can make $2 on this trade, then it seems pretty good. And it's going to be close, right? Because it's like a flip of a coin. If you're flipping a coin, it's 50-50. It's heads or tails. It's 1-to-1. Well, in this case, you got to get to a little bit higher. So you got to get paid a little bit more than $2 on an at-the-money option in order to make it worthwhile for you. Okay. So this is, again, it's risk reward. I haven't talked about anything about the Greeks or implied volatility because I don't focus on that. And the top guys in the world don't focus on that. So you have millions of hours of videotape online talking about the Greeks, and there's millions of people trading options. Most of them right now are buying options, and you can ask all of them the simple question, and nobody's going to know the answer. How do you actually choose the right strike for you? And how do you know that's the right strike for you? How do you know you're getting the right odds on that trade with what you're thinking? Think about that problem. Think about how much money is being traded today in options, and think about a simple question that can't be answered. That's a problem. And that's what I'm out there trying to illustrate to people that, hey, this problem exists. And I'm tackling that. That's really the problem I'm trying to solve.
So I've heard from different people from different areas of the internets. A lot of people put their emphasis on like the unusual options activities, right? There's whole companies and people on CNBC who built their stake on the unusual options activity.
That's right.
And a lot of the time that would be, from what I've seen, like out of the money options.
Yes.
And that would give you like the 35-to-1 type results that you're talking about. But here's the but.
Yes.
To me, as an investor, as a trader, that really unnerves me. The idea of, you know what, if it doesn't work, it's a zero value.
Okay.
And I mean, that's the first way I blew up my account, Felix, was, you know, I bought tons of out of the money options like everybody does. And that's how I blew it out.
What's the question? I'll address I'm going to address everything you just talked about, but where's
no
the exact question?
It's just like,
thought. Hey, this is a thought
conversation on it.
Fine. Yeah, no problem. So what I would say, let's start from the beginning. Let's start from the unusual options activity. Okay. Let's just start right there. There's a whole world of unusual options activity. Okay. This is great. So I've done unusual option activity at the institutional side. Now I'm doing it. And part of the way we find ideas is through unusual options activities. But let's talk about what unusual options activity is first. Okay. Unusual options activity. The only thing that it is that if the options are trading today at a higher pace than they've been trading, let's say over the last month, then it would be considered as unusual. So we might say we want to find unusual options activity that's 2 times the average over the last month. So for example, if XYZ stock trades 10,000 options a day on average, and today it's trading 50,000 contracts per today, then it's 5 times the average. Okay, so that would be considered great. That's unusual options activity. That's all unusual options activity means at the highest level. Okay, now the question is, why do people focus on unusual options activity? That's probably question number one. So why is it important? Well, who cares? It trades 50,000. Okay. Well, the idea is that the top guys in the world, they're trading with billions of dollars. So when they want to buy a position, they're not buying 1 to 10 options or 100 options. They're trying to buy 20,000 or 15,000. And so because they're coming in buying such significant size, they pop up on the screens of unusual options activity. Okay. So right there, you should understand that the biggest guys in the world have to trade big size to make the position worthwhile. And so they're going to pop up on these screens. Okay. So now you have this pool of these hedge funds popping up on the screens. Is that fair so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get it.
Good. So now you got to go back and think, why is that important? Why do I care about that? Well, you care because in the investing world, people are looking for edge. So if you like a stock, if I like Apple, what edge do I have? I like Apple because I bought a Apple iPhone and I use their products, and that's not edge. Okay, edge is a very edge in. There's different ways to get edge, but you can get edge in fundamental analysis. You can get edge in technical analysis. You can get some edge in data digging. You can get edge in maybe you're at a country club and you know all the big CEOs and you see how excited they are. Maybe there's a little edge there, But the point is that the hedge funds are spending millions of dollars trying to get this edge, millions of dollars legally. Okay, legal edge. They're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Okay, they're spending millions of dollars, not just on the resources that they're buying to get that edge, but on the people that they're putting out there to help them find it, the analysts, the people they're talking to, the consultants they're calling up and paying for their time. And they're looking all for this edge that's their job. That's what they do. Okay. Now, once they get an idea and they look at the idea and analyze the idea and analyze where the stock could go up and down, they sort of have a framework of what's going to happen. Now they look at the options world and they have to make this conscious choice. So what people don't appreciate, because nobody's really sort of highlighted it, is that when you see this options pop up on unusual options activity, right? I'm trying to put the pieces in your head to show you how that actually transpired. It didn't just say some guy just didn't wake up and say, "Oh, I want to buy 20,000 options of XYZ." It's not how it works, right? There's a lot of thought and a lot of effort to get the idea. And then there's this crucial part where the money manager has to say, I don't want to use stock. I want to use options. Or he might say, I'm going to use this amount of stock and I'm going to use this amount of options. Okay. That's a big decision. When he decides to not use stock and use options, and you see it pop up on the board, that gives you some confidence that he did the risk reward analysis and he thought options were better than stock. Okay, so there's a clue there. So it pops up, and now you're trying to say, okay, someone is thinking trading options here is better than trading stock. Now, in order to look at unusual options activity, you have to look for the buyers of options, because the buyers of options are telling you that the signal is that they're telling you they believe there is going to be an outside move here, outside up or down. Okay. And just because they're buying calls, that doesn't always mean outsized up move. It could mean that they think there's a lot of risk to the downside. Okay. It could mean that they're getting out of their stock, which you don't know that part, and they're just buying these calls just because they want to stay long the stock, but they're risk managing their portfolio. And so, excuse me. So what you're looking for in this unusual option activity is you're looking for the buyers. Not every unusual option activity alert or this or that coming at you is going to be valued the same. Okay. You have to look for certain particular things. At Options Geek, that's what we're doing. We're teaching you. I'm teaching you what to look for. I have a podcast on each day from Monday to Thursday at 1:00 Eastern time. I show you live the analysis on the unusual options activity. I'm showing people how to do it, how to think about it, what I see that's important here that may not have popped up on yesterday's trade. But this trade is a little bit different. And look at this. We look at spreads and what the person might be doing there. We look at opening and closing positions, trying to decipher whether they're opening and closing positions. We look at at a number of things like how does what do the technicals reflect in the stock, and does that agree with what we're seeing in the options world? It's a guessing game. It's a game where we're playing stock detective, and we're pulling out little pieces to figure out this big puzzle. See, I'm of the belief that the hedge fund who traded those options, he has edge, or at least he thinks he has edge. Okay, because he traded that option, he thinks he has edge on options versus stock. And because he's in the name, he's done a lot of work to know where that stock might go or where it can go. Because he chose this expiration, he understands that maybe there's an event, there's something that's going to move that stock within that expiration. So in an options trade, there is a lot of clues. And in the podcast on a daily basis, I'm showing people, you see that? That's a clue. You see what they did here? Sometimes we see not buyers, but we see buyers and sellers of a particular option. And someone has this, maybe it's a trade called the collar where they're buying puts, selling calls. And I'm trying to explain to people what that is and why that's important and who that actually might be. You see, I have a lot of experience to point out and say, I think it's this guy. And people say, how did you know that? So because I spent 20 years talking to people and I know he does those type of trades. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Most people don't have that. Most people don't have that experience. I could
Mhm.
say when I see someone, I could say, that looks like Melvin Capital. Or I can look at the 13Fs and say, he was in this name. That might be him. Or it looks like Steve Cohen. You know what? I think that's Bill Ackman. I can say, oh, look at this trade. That's BlackRock. I'm pretty sure that's BlackRock. If I'm a betting guy, I would bet that. You're giving me some odds, I'd bet that's BlackRock. Most people can't say that, or most people don't know that. And so I can narrow down potentially who's buying these things. And that's valuable information. And so I teach that. I teach people how to dig, how to be a stock detective, if you will, an options detective as well. I also teach a little bit, I think you got to know a little bit about fundamentals. So I teach people where to find the story, right? We're looking also at the story. We're not just going on, there's an options buyer, I'm going to follow him because it's
Mhm.
10,000 fine calls. We're not doing that. We're looking at that. We're looking at technicals, and then we're looking for the story. We're looking for the story. So if I was teaching you, I would say, Chris, in order to do this, you got to look at the technicals, look at the option, you got to find a story. And you can say, well, how do I do that? Well, the two questions you got to answer with the story is, why did someone, first of all, how does this company make money? That's really what you need to, how do they make money? What drives this company? What's going to make this company go up or down? Okay, that's one. That's a little bit easier. But then the second one is, why did someone get out of bed this morning and decide today's the day I'm going to buy 20,000 of these calls or puts?
Mhm.
Why did they
Mhm.
do that? Why did they pick today to do that and then choose the one that they chose? That's the second part. So how does the company make money? And then I guess you can narrow down the second question to, why is it exciting right now? Why is it exciting to get into this company right now? That's it. Those two questions. And you dig through earnings transcripts, you dig through the news, you jump around on social media. There's smart people out there putting little nuggets for you to read. This is how you do it. And you're digging at I'm not trying to find out whether XYZ is get this massive edge. I'm trying to piggyback someone who's done all the work. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what we're doing. But now to go back to your point about UOA and how it's out of the money options. Again, the top guys in the world, they buy options, and then the top guys in the world, they buy out of the money options, which is very different from what you'll hear out there. But
Yeah,
that
for
is the
sure.
truth. That is the truth. The top guys in the world, they buy options, which first of all was new before I started saying this about year and a half ago. They buy options, and then two, they buy out of the money options. Okay, so now I get a lot of pushback on out of the money options, and
Yeah.
the out of my and the pushback is always, it's idiotic to buy out of the money options. That's stupid to buy option because they, like you said, they go to zero. They go to zero most of the time. Okay, and I say, okay, anybody who says, they don't buy out of the money options, I ask them, what do you buy? What do you buy? And you know what? Most of the time they say, I buy the 70 delta, the in the money options.
Mhm.
And I say, okay, that's fair. And then I ask a simple question. I ask, do you know, that the in the money option, the in the money option is really, say an in the money call option is really the same as buying stock and buying an out of the money put option. Did you know that? And they might say yes or no. And if they did, and I said, well, if you know that the in the money call option is the same as buying stock and an out of the money put option, and you just told me that it's stupid to buy an out of the money option, then why is buying an in the money option the right answer? Because you're really buying an out of the money option when you're buying in the money option. Okay. And people don't understand that. Most people don't understand that. So just by asking that question and having to ask that question, or someone says that, I know that they don't know options
Mhm.
on a fundamental level. They might listen. If people make millions of dollars, that doesn't mean they know what an option is. There are a lot of people using options making a fortune. Do they understand really what an option is? I would say probably not. Now they understand how to use it. It's a baseball bat, with leverage, and you're just swinging around and you're hitting things right now. But ultimately, you gotta harness that leverage. Okay, so you talked about, yes, out of the money options do go to zero. Okay, often. So now you got to go a little bit further, and you got to say, we got to develop a plan. So we're not doing that. We're not writing options to zero.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so at Options Geek, I spend a lot of time and a lot of effort talking about risk management and talking about how we don't write options to zero and how we're playing a probability game that over time, over time, we're trying to play this game, and over time, we're trying to find out whether or not we're getting edge. And we can do that only by doing 100 trades. And so I've been very transparent with all the trades that I've given, and I don't give. I sort of have a leeway of about 4 or 5 months because we still have open trades. But on the website, you could see all the trades that I've done. You could see what we've done. And yes, on one column, you will see some of these trades that have made a lot of money. And on the left, you might even see that some of these trades that went up 500-600%, they went back to zero. And people say, you see, they all go to zero. And say, yeah, but we're also not sticking around for 600%. We're actively stopping ourselves, and we're taking money off the table as things go in our direction.
Mhm.
And so it's called risk management. So at Options Geek, I'm teaching people a process which is trying to find ideas either on your own or through unusual options activity. That's one. I'm teaching people a plan, how to extract profits from this process that you have. Everybody can, there's a million processes out there. You, I'm sure, have a process. Maybe it starts when I wake up at 7 a.m. I have a good breakfast. I do exercise. I've done my research at night. I'm ready to walk, and then you have my charts, and everybody has a process of how they actually invest. Well, we have this process, and then we have a plan. And I spend a lot of time honing people's skills on the plan, because that's where the money is really made. Right. The money, the process is good and it's going to start going, but the money is extracted through the plan. So process and plan. And then the last element is the emotions of investing, and especially trading, if you're going to do it more actively. And on the podcast, we talk about those emotions and how to trick the mind a little bit, things that people can use for the purpose of keeping sane and not allowing the voices in your head to sort of control what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot going on there. So it sounds like, so your podcast that you mentioned, is that like available everywhere? Or is that like an Options Geek podcast?
It's an Options Geek podcast, but available mainly on YouTube. Most of it, we have YouTube, and we're on Apple and all the podcast things. But our main audience comes to YouTube. We have there's a chat, so people are chatting while I'm talking. I try to answer some questions, really it's not just educational, because in on a day-to-day basis, we're finding the best trade ideas of the day. I believe that the best trading ideas are in that pool of unusual options activity. And it goes back to the why, because someone decided today was the day to go and start leveraging my idea.
Gotcha.
So I consider that pool to be the pool of great trading ideas.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just pulled up your YouTube here. It's youtube.com/optionsgeek. Okay, very cool. I'm gonna have to get you a subscriber right here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Make sure you guys go and subscribe as well, because I tell you what, I want to start tuning in to hear what you're talking about. Your thumbnails are fantastic, by the way. Somebody's working real good on those.
Awesome.
So yeah, very cool, Felix. So what's one takeaway that if you were to give somebody coming into your world, what's one takeaway that you could give them to just kind of like say, you know what, here's where you need to get started?
Absolutely. I grew up. My mother instilled in me a belief in education. Humble backgrounds, and she said, "You can conquer the world, but you got to be smart at it. You got to have a plan. You got to study." And I take education seriously, and I believe that this options game is a game that requires understanding and know-how. It's a leverage game, and the takeaway is to find education that speaks to you. Find education where you really understand what you're doing, and you can really understand the process and the plan, and educate yourself. It all starts there. If I can teach you how to press the buttons. The industry has taught everyone how to press the buttons, but I want you to understand what goes into pressing those buttons, right? Because purpose matters. How you do it matters. In a probability game, over time, you will lose. There's no doubt. There's over time, if you do not know what you're doing in any probability game, anyone, heads or tails, if you don't know the payout you're getting and you're just flipping a coin and you don't know exactly what you're winning, you will lose. Mathematically, you will lose if you have the wrong payout. In any poker game, Playing in poker, you can get lucky and win, but if you're not playing poker mathematically, over time, you're likely to lose. Any part, backgammon, you name it. Probability game is about mathematical edge. And so I would say to anyone thinking about options that it's important to be educated. And I would also then say, if you don't believe what I'm saying about no one being able to answer this question, all I would ask you is to go ask. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just trying to tell you something so that you, your listeners, anyone I speak to, just go ask every option guru online. Just ask that simple question. How do I know this is the right one?
Mm-hmm.
And there is an answer. There is a process to get that answer. And the answer is evaded me for so long. And I was at the top of the game. So when I tell you that it's okay, Wall Street is very good. Wall Street is very good at suppressing anything that might disrupt anything, right? So when you ask the question, people might even get angry at you. They might even say, I can't teach you that right now. You got to go through all the education. You got to go through all the Greeks and all that. And then you might say, I did all of that. I know all of that. But where do I look in that to get the answer? Mm-hmm. You'll get crickets. People hang up the phone. I can't teach you right now. Wall Street has done a great job of suppressing this question because you're supposed to know, right? Because after watching 100 hours of video, you're supposed to know. It's almost like shaming people. How could you not know? You just got to keep digging in there. You got to keep learning that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate. But, I teach options education in 10 hours, 12 hours. After a weekend, people are calling me, sending me emails saying, this is incredible. Absolutely incredible the way you presented it. So education, great education, doesn't have to be hundreds of hours long. It can be a few hours where you understand it. And then the learning begins. The nuances, the podcast. So the podcast is there to elevate my education. My education teaches you quickly, and then the podcast is there to sort of leverage education, right? It's leverage. I believe in leverage, and it's leveraging education. So mm-hmm. you take some time, you learn, and then we're going to leverage your education on the podcast. That's the takeaway. If you're going to play this game, just be sure you understand what you're playing. Just know what you're playing.
Yeah. Well, cool. I got to tell you, I'm interested in going back and going through your old catalog of videos here. So if you see a spike on watch time this weekend, it's definitely me.
Listen, I'm happy to come back. If you find one video that you like, I'm happy to come back and explain the nuances and the thought process. And, sometimes, I've said a lot here. I know that, but it's just people will digest it and then hopefully take a look at what we're doing on the podcast, like the podcast, and then go back and say, all right, let me go, get a good fundamental base and then make that podcast explode. The knowledge you'll get from the podcast once you have a solid base will explode. So, I'm happy to come back and you pick anyone you like. There's some real good ones lately that we're spotting some of these trades and we're helping people look at them. And I don't tell everybody what to do. I say, this is what's going on. Take a look at this, but I think you'll be amazed by seeing the track record. We have one video there that says, I think it's right in the top that says, we went through our first 30 episodes and we talked about all the trades that we talked about. And, it's mind blowing some of the stuff that once you're looking at it, the way we're looking at it, the things you can find. And the audience, you'll hear that, you'll see the chats, you'll see them excited and they're learning. For the first time, people are actually learning how to do it themselves. And that's fine. That's fine with me.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm excited to check it out. And I definitely want the audience to go check it out as well. It's youtube.com/optionsgeek. And then check out Felix and learn everything about him over at optionsgeek.com. Felix, this has been highly educational, and I feel like this may be one of several episodes that you and I are going to be doing together. So
awesome.
I appreciate it, man. This has been great.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you guys for tuning in to today's How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and enable notifications. That way you never miss any of the tools, tips, and tricks that we upload every single week to help you trade faster and trade smarter. I'll see you on the next episode. Okay, so what'd you think? That was pretty incredible, right? Now, if you liked that, that's only a taste, only a sample of what you're going to find in the full AI stock trading system. And I really highly encourage you to go and check this out. Obviously, you are interested in learning on how to trade, and that's why you're listening to this podcast. Now, I'm going to take and download my entire trading system that I use day in and day out onto you. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is over at the AIstocktrading.com. You're going to get phase 1, 2, and 3, several bonuses, and on top of that, I'm going to walk you through over a dozen trades that I put on inside of my account, holding your hand and showing you exactly how I got in, how I got out, how I use the artificial intelligence data, and how this could work inside of your own trading portfolio on a daily basis. So make sure you head on over to aistocktradingsystem.com. That's aistocktradingsystem.com to learn more and to get started and to download my decade plus worth of trading experience into your hands so you can start using the AI stock trading system today, the 5-step system to take the guesswork out of trading. Hey, if you like this video, let me know by leaving me a like below, and then subscribe and share it with somebody you think could use it as well. Be sure to comment below with your biggest takeaway from this episode and any suggestions you have for future episodes. And finally, make sure you watch these other videos to help you trade faster and trade smarter, and I'll see you on the next episode.